everybody. It is Monday, September 12th, 2018. I'd like to first start off, we're going to start off a little unusually tonight. We have a public hearing on our bond issuance notification. So at this time, we will open the Bond Issuance Notification Act required hearing to receive any comments relative to the district's proposal to sell not to exceed $2,100,000 in general obligation limited park bonds. All persons desiring to be heard on this matter will now have an opportunity to present written or oral testimony to the Board of Commissioners. These proposed bonds are to be issued for the payment of land condemned or purchased for parks, for the building, maintaining, improving, and protecting of the same and the existing land and facilities of the park of the district, and for the payment of the expenses incident thereto. Before we take any testimony from the public, would any of the Board of Commissioner members like to make comment regarding the proposal to the issue general obligations limited park bonds?
I would love to.
Yes, please.
These are similar to, if you remember, every 3 years we've been issuing these bonds for usually $1 million, and they get paid back over 3 years as part of the financing of the lakefront project. Part of the package there is going for $2 million over 6 years, so essentially extending out another 3 years, but getting another $1 million more than we would have otherwise. And that's been part of the whole financial planning model we've had. Mm-hmm. So, and it's non-referendum debt, obviously. So.
Anybody else? Any other commissioners? All right. Are there any residents or members of the public here this evening that wish to provide oral or written testimony concerning the proposed issuance of the general obligation limited park bonds? Yes, Mr. Crystal.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Ronan Crystal, 250 Vista Court. Regarding the bond, the $2,100,000. The beach house and parking lot project has $750,000 marked for gardening expenses. The architect himself, Mr. Tinucci, said that it is an extraordinary high amount for the job. So why is it there in the first place? Recently, you voted to spend $138,500 for the new beach parking lot for the pavers, which will only add a cosmetic value and maybe expenses in the future. You spent almost $500,000 on the Gilson pirate ship playground, which doesn't bring any income to the village or the park district, and very few people are actually using it. You voted to build a full kitchen over time at the beach house, which, to make it full, it was an addition of about $250,000 to have the space and the fryers so we can have some French fries and chicken nuggets. And I love those. But those are going to be the most expensive fries in the world, as far as I know. The way you are spending the residents' hard-earned money, I think, is nothing short of a scandal. I know it's not fun to hear that. I completely oppose the bond. I'm asking you to do a 180. Stop throwing our money away and spend it wisely. Cut everything that you can, and we will not need a bond. You can do it.
Do you have anything further?
Excuse me?
Do you have anything further?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address us on this issue? Secretary Wilson, has the district received any written or other type of correspondence regarding to the proposed issuance of the general obligation limited park bonds?
No, we have not.
Okay. Thank you very much. With all persons desiring to be heard been given an opportunity to present oral and written testimony regarding the proposal to issue the bonds. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the hearing.
I'll move to adjourn the hearing.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Are there any further comments or discussion from members of the Board of Commissioners? Hearing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletin?
Yes.
Commissioner Olvani?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
The hearing is adjourned.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn is approved. The Bond Issuance Notification Act hearing is now finally adjourned. That being said, we'll move on to our regular meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners. May we have a roll call, please? Do we have to do that again?
I think we know who's here.
Okay.
Let's skip it.
Okay. Given that we know who's here, we'll move on to approval of minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the August 13, 2018 regular board meeting.
I'll second that.
Are there any comments or corrections to the August 13th, 2018 regular meeting minutes?
Nope.
Hearing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletin?
Yes.
Commissioner Olvani?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you. We have one more set of minutes.
Yes. I move to approve the minutes for the August 13, 2018 closed session meeting.
I'll second.
Are there any comments or corrections to the August 13th, 2018 closed session meeting minutes? If there are any discussions, then we will have to go into a closed session later in the meeting. If not, we can go ahead and take a roll call now and move to approve those.
I'm ready to.
Everyone's ready to approve?
Yep.
Okay. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletin?
Yes.
Commissioner Olvani?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is communications and correspondence. In our original packet, there was an email from Carrie Phillips in support of the playground at Langdon Park. There were also some additional correspondence that we received walking into the meeting here. It also looks like it is in regards to Langdon Park,
Sarah Strickow.
Sarah Strickow, and then also a memo from Board of Go Green Wilmette regarding protecting open spaces and natural resources for the future generations. Is there any other correspondence or communications that board members have received?
No.
Were these put on the table? The additional?
I don't believe that one was all the Langdon stuff was.
Okay.
This one.
I can make
We got the
extra.
Go Green one at the Facilities Committee meeting prior to this meeting.
Okay. So this should be made available to the public, because it's only been shown to the board.
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
Would somebody like to summarize what it says?
So, I can do it. It looks like that it's asking us to carefully examine the pros and cons of underground water retention tanks in the parks.
And are you going to continue
Oh, well, yeah.
and engage the community in this important decision?
And engage the community, which, yes. And then also soliciting advice of green infrastructure experts. Is there anything else? Okay. All right, since there's no other communications or correspondence, we'll move on to recognition of visitors. At this point, I'd like to remind everyone of our policy that we have put in place recently regarding policy for public comment. Your comments may be restricted to 3 minutes, we ask, so that everybody can get their comments in. I'll give you a 30-second warning. And we ask that they all be pertaining to current park district business. Is there anyone that would like to address us? Yes, sir. Mhm. Yeah, sure.
Should be able to keep it under 3 minutes, although in the past I've gone over. Just a few questions. First, let me start off. Will the circular path remain as is? I understand that it will. I know you've voted last time to remove the outer paths and the swings and stuff, but the circular path that goes around the existing playground, is that going to be the same footprint as the existing one is. In other words, John, I believe you said pavers from the sidewalk to the path. What will be the path from the pavers? More pavers, or?
Yes. Yeah, everything that's there is coming out, new path put in, all pavers, no concrete.
So it'll be like a hand mirror? This way
Correct.
and this way?
Correct.
All pavers?
Good analogy, yeah.
Perfect.
There
Thank you.
is that right? My understanding was that there was no circular path around
Right, that it
around
was
the
a
playground.
Y shape.
I think it might be Y-shaped. It may not complete all the way on the lake side of the parking, of the park itself, but yes, I think it's Y, but very close to
So
your
it's going
mirror.
to go off this way
On both
and
sides,
not
yeah.
connect on the other end?
I don't believe it does.
I don't
I'd
think
have to
so
look at the
either.
diagram again.
No, yeah, I don't think the circle is going to be there any longer.
Jerry, do you know
Because-
the answer to that?
Yeah, it would be a Y, but there'll be a concrete ribbon for the surface around.
A curb.
On the outside.
But not a walkway, correct. Okay.
So in other words, the way I understand it is because of the changes that we made, that the committee recommended of getting rid of some of the other pathways, my understanding is that the only thing that was left of pathways was simply access to the playground, and that's it. No other walking paths. Is that
Jerry?
accurate?
I understand it, yeah.
So my question now would be, is because you're not completing a circle, does that mean that the playground is going to extend past the footprint that it now exists? Because, again, I'm an advocate for not cutting down any trees, especially there's a memorial tree there. Is this extension, because I also asked to relocate the spinner to a different spot. Ms. Foster, I believe I talked to you about that it could create a perfect circle as opposed to having this sort of serpentine appendage, if you will. So my question is the Y going to be initiated because now the spinner is going to be sort of put out somewhere in the middle of nowhere, in a sense? Because now you've taken out the back of this circular path? Because I know the spinner's going in. I know that,
Well-
see the young man is here, he's going to get his spinner. I'm very happy for him. He did a good job speaking up for that spinner. So I don't know, I'm asking a lot of questions here, but
Everything about inside the playground is all connected continuously by a play surface, the rubberized play surface, so.
right,
it's
but,
not-
you know, I spoke to Ms. Foster about that there is a honey locust tree, and on the side of that is going to be going the swings, and there was room on the other side of it for the spinner, as opposed to making it an appendage and, making the park smaller as far as, the park, and making it more serpentine playground, if you will.
Right. Jerry was there also hearing you, right? Do you remember this?
Right, yeah.
About the honey locust tree?
Right.
I don't know where we ended up on that.
The stand was it's going to stay where it is.
The spinner.
The spinner. Which
So
would be
stay with-
the northeast corner. All
What-
connected in the same playground surface.
Wasn't one of the original stipulations that none of the memorial trees were getting removed, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so none of the memorial trees are getting
Okay,
removed.
so it's going to stay within that existing footprint. That's very satisfying to hear.
That's right.
Perfect, I think.
Okay, Jerry's saying
Because
yes.
it's a beautiful white birch, and these birch trees have been suffering this summer. They're dying all over the place, and since it's a memorial tree and a tree that's healthy, I'm glad to hear it's going to stay put. I appreciate that. Okay, that's it. I had more to say on a personal comment, but I think you satisfied my request, and and thank you for hearing me in previous meetings.
Thank you.
And
Thank
okay,
you.
one more question. Because of this water retention that you spoke of, what about a start date? Are you still trying to start it this year? Or is it going to be delayed until the spring because of the fact that
The tanks, the water,
No,
Well,
We're talking about Langdon, right?
were you talking about the tanks with Langdon for the water?
No.
I think
What is
he's
your question?
referring
Oh,
to
you're
the
jumping
email.
to the new subject.
Because you brought up the pictures of this other,
Gentlemen,
No, we're still talking about Langdon.
oh,
okay,
Yes.
so is there a situation there that needs to be dealt with underground before you can start to put the playground on top?
no.
That's all taken care of.
that's what I'm aware of.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address us? Yes.
Hi, my name is Marcia Heater. I'm at 910 10th Street. I'm here representing, I'm a member of the board of Go Green Wilmette. And I just wanted to read this statement to you because we took some time putting it together so that you could hear it clearly. First of all, we, the board of Go Green Wilmette, would like to thank the Wilmette Park District Commissioners for all your hard work on behalf of our community. Your mission to enrich the quality of community life and promote wholesome activities through creative programming for people of all ages and abilities, long sentence, while protecting open space and natural resources for future generations is very important to the well-being of our residents and overlaps with the mission of Go Green Wilmette. We're confident that you will continue to protect open spaces and natural resources for future generations as you consider ways to help the community handle its stormwater challenges. And we encourage you to carefully and openly examine the pros and cons of options, including underground water retention tanks in park properties, and engage the community in this important decision. We would also like to suggest that you solicit the advice of green infrastructure experts to more fully understand the environmental impacts of various stormwater solutions in our parks. Thank you very much from all the board. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Do you have this in your?
We
We
do.
do.
We all have a
We
copy.
just got
So I
it.
don't need that.
Did
Commissioner
you,
Foster had a question.
did you make this a similar statement to the village?
I don't think so.
I would encourage you to do that
Go
because
to the village
this
with
is their
Project.
project.
Okay.
No,
So-
I disagree with that. It's on our parks.
That doesn't mean it's our project.
It is now.
The village initiated it, the village is financing it. They have to get our permission to do it in our parks, but it's the village's project.
Right, but they have to get permission to use our parks, is my
Correct.
understanding.
Yes.
I didn't
So
say
so
they
I-
didn't have to get
No,
permission.
but I'm saying that makes it our project just as much as their project. in my
I don't
opinion.
agree with that, but I
might
think
be
you should
important.
be addressing both boards.
Okay.
I think they need to hear this just as much as we do.
That won't be a problem. We'll be glad
Great.
to do that. Thank you.
I think with regard to
Thank you.
green infrastructure, that we have an interest in that. This board, at least I do, with regard to
Okay.
green infrastructure in our park and in anything that's done to our park. So I applaud your statement, and yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Kate Jaya, and I live at 325 Central Avenue. And I am co-president of the League of Women Voters of Wilmette. And tonight I am speaking on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Wilmette. And let me begin by thanking all of the Park District commissioners and staff for all of your hard work for our community. We all appreciate it very much. One of the ways that the League stays abreast of the happenings of local government is through our Observer Corps. One observer recently flagged to us that the village staff attended a park board meeting in July to present the stormwater plan approved by the village board. We have gone back and reviewed agendas, minutes, and video from park board meetings and real estate committee meetings since December of 2017 to see what reporting from Park District staff and discussion among park commissioners has taken place up to this point. We have also met separately with village and Park District staff to check our understanding of the communication between the village board and the park board. With passage of the stormwater plan by the village board, the development of a detailed plan by village and Park District staff has now begun. And we see that Director Wilson is updating the board on that plan tonight. In many ways, the ball is now in the park board's court. Although we appreciate the level of Park District staff involvement to date, the massive nature of the stormwater project and the effect it will have as currently envisioned on the village's parks requires park board involvement. As the elected representatives of the citizens of this community, Park Board engagement is the citizens' best way to have a representative in the room, looking out for our parks, and also the best way to make sure that there are opportunities for citizen input on park development throughout this process. Public meetings lend themselves to these goals. The Village Board and the Park Board represent the same constituency, but they represent different resident priorities. Residents have a strong interest in being informed about and having opportunities to comment on issues related to parkland, such as, 1, how the stormwater plan will impact their current and future ability to use and enjoy the parks. 2, the financial implications of these plans for asset values and running costs of the parks in question, as well as any long-term limitations on potential alternative uses of the land. And 3, analyses of environmental impacts. We urge the Park Board to establish a process for periodic, systematic input on the stormwater plan. We defer to Park Board commissioners for the best way to make sure that happens. This Park Board engagement should be in addition to, not a substitute for, the cooperation currently underway at the staff level of both organizations. And we thank you for your consideration of this recommendation from the League.
Thank you very much.
I would put the same question that Commissioner Foster gave to Mrs. Heater, and that is, have you made this same statement to the Village Board?
We have made statements at Village Board meetings numerous times in the past. Yes, and we've
I
been in
understand. Have you
communication with
made
Village
this
staff.
particular statement
This
to them?
exact statement, we have not.
but
This
this
was a
is
statement to
directed
the
at-
Park
this is
Board.
directed at us.
I understand. I heard the statement, yes. But what I'm saying is that as it is the village's project,
Correct.
It would be very important to let them know that you want them to work with the Park Board to achieve the goals that you stated.
I think we have made
I
that.
would say it's up to this board to decide whether or not we wish to work with the Village Board on this project. That's our decision, not somebody else's.
I didn't say it was. I was encouraging the League of Women Voters to talk to the Village Board as well.
I appreciate the League of Women Voters statements, and I certainly agree with your call for further and systematic action by this board.
Thanks.
I would like to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to address us? Yes, sir.
Evening.
Good evening.
My name is Neil Ferrari. I live at 2546 Laurel Lane. My backyard backs up onto the community playfield. My wife and I affectionately call it our North 40. I have a short general statement here concerning the village's stormwater detention. All I ask is that there be a more transparent process. Now, I'm not part of the League of Women Voters, and I'm also not a part of Go Green. I'm simply an individual who is requesting the board maybe use the redevelopment of Gilson Park as a model. I thought the board did an excellent job in soliciting, listening to, and considering the comments that came on that project. And personally, I think with a very good result. I have not seen much in the media on this project, and so I would suggest that there needs to be more involvement by the community and the neighbors solicited through this board on this project. Now, I agree that this is the village's project, and this board does not have a direct financial contribution to the project, but there's a significant in-kind contribution because it's your land. And they have to do, I would suspect that you would have a major say in what they're going to do on your land. So, all I ask is please, we need to have a little bit more community outreach, whether it's at Centennial, Community Playfield, wherever you decide to put it. I think that's all part of the decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to address us? Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Edie Rowell. I was here at the last board meeting. I live at 2710 Hawthorne Lane, and I'm wearing two hats here. One is a resident of the area that's most impacted by the stormwater, as well as the co-president of the Little Garden Club of Wilmette. First of all, I would like to thank all of the commissioners for all of the work that you have done, and particularly for the support that we've had at Gilson Park with the bird habitat and as Centennial over the years. The staff in the Park District has been magnificent in helping out, and we really appreciate all of the support that the board, I know, has given to that in the time that you as commissioners have put into that. So thank you. Very much interested in the criteria that will be used. I noted from the packet that was on the table today that there was a stormwater project update. There was a meeting on that, which we definitely applaud. Are those more detailed minutes available for review by the public?
It was a meeting between the two staffs, so it was not a public, it wasn't a meeting of any of the board members.
Oh, so that the information that would pertain to this, because a lot of it was to the point that was being raised by League of Women Voters and Go Green, pertained to the use, what was going to be involved, and things of that nature.
So when we get to that portion, Director Wilson will update us on what took place at that meeting, and that time we are going to have a very, I assume, lengthy discussion about that.
I will stop talking and let you get on with it.
Okay.
But thank you very much, and particularly Jerry and his staff. They're wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sarah Sturgo. I was at, I think, the last meeting. I've been to so many meetings about Langdon Park. I've lived here most of my life, as I've mentioned, I think every time I've spoken. When I started down this path almost 2 years ago, when I emailed John after my son ran into standing wastewater at Shorewood Park, and I had just about had it with the park situation, I didn't think I would run up against. I thought like my biggest debate or argument I was going to have would be fighting with my neighbors over what kind of slide we wanted, or who wanted baby swings and who wanted toddler swings. It's been a really different experience, and at times an unfortunate experience as someone who grew up here as a kid. I heard from a neighbor, and it just about broke my heart that she felt unwelcome in Wilmette with her children. So I implore you as a board tonight, when you're voting on Langdon, to understand that there's a group of people who can't sit in these meetings. A lot of them are probably tucked away in bed right now, and they're the little kids who want to play at the park. My son's 4 years old and went to the meeting with me in April, and he's still asking where the park is. And it's hard to explain to a 4-year-old that adults can't figure it out. And that's what it really seems like. I feel like we've made a lot of compromises. I was really disappointed actually on the pathways compromise, because I actually feel like the people that are being hurt the most are the elderly in the condos, who now won't be able to access the views and the things that make Langdon really special and great. So I don't know, Steve is looking down because he probably doesn't want to answer any more questions. I don't know if there's a way to make those paths that if later there's a change of heart or a change in the minds of people, that circle could be put back in, because I think that does actually make Langdon, and I'm looking at you, my friend, I think it makes it accessible to everyone, right? If you have your wheelchair or your walker, you can go past the park and you can go enjoy the views and the park benches. We are in competition, so I've heard make it just a green space. We're competing with TV, video games, and that ugly World Wide Web that we all love to go on. So this park, it's different than it was 35 years ago. We have things as parents that we have to deal with. If I want my kids to go outside, it's got to be compelling and exciting. So I just ask that you keep that in mind. My last thing is there was a resident that recently passed away, and this may not be the right thing. Is there space, like I was wondering if the village, I know that a lot of people are wondering what they can do, and I'm forgetting his name, but there's orange ribbons around the tree. I don't know if that would be appropriate to ask his family if they'd like to put a memorial bench in there. I know that a lot of residents are looking for ways to sort of reach out to help the family, so that was a thought. I'd be happy to donate to that. I don't know how we do that. So I guess I'm asking that as a question.
Contact staff with regard to the memorial policy. There are benches, trees. We have, it's taken some time, but that procedure policy has been sort of reinstituted, so you can contact staff. And
Okay, I know
pursue
in
that.
next door, and I don't know if you guys are on there, a lot of people have been like asking what they can do for this family because it's terrible what they're going through.
I feel like there's a person that's, you can contact through the family, and I don't remember what the name is,
Okay.
but I feel like there is somebody that is, if you go back and look through some of those, you can see who the person is.
Like
to
a
con-
person, okay.
Yeah, because I think the family doesn't necessarily want to be not bothered,
Yeah,
but
no,
you know, they're
I
going
don't
through a
wanna-
lot.
I don't
so,
know them personally,
but
but I
there
know
is
a lot of
somebody
people
that's
are like-
taking donations and things
Okay.
like that. So maybe, and I don't know off the top of my head who that person is, but I know there was a name on there.
Okay, so anyways, I'm asking, I don't want to delay this park. We'd like it to be put in. I feel like it's already been delayed. It was supposed to be started. So I'm just asking to maybe consider the paths and making them more accessible to the entire park and not just to the playground. But,
Thank you.
all right,
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Madam Crystal, 250 Vista Court. Since we're talking about finances, I wanted to bring one point, and that's going to be just a continuation and probably many more to come. Recently, I've asked Mr. Wilson about the compensation that the superintendent of recreation is receiving for their work. And the reply was $140,000 a year. I checked around, and it's about 35% higher than anything that it should be. And considering that 6 months out of the year, golf is shut down, sailing and beach is shut down, other things are not operational, you know, and they have managers under there. Why are we paying so much money for that position? I would like you to reconsider and to reevaluate the position and reevaluate how much money we're spending on it. We have the money, we just have to spend it wisely. Thank you.
Just so you know, we are in the process of doing some salary studies across the Park District, not just in that position. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Hi.
I am Emily Berger of 1224 Elmwood, and I'm very excited that Langdon Park was approved, and just here to support that the budget gets approved tonight and that we move forward as weather and everything allows this fall. I guess my only question was, it seemed like it came down to the playground being approved and then kind of hardscape landscape was a separate part. Is that something that will be like considered again, or are we like missing the boat? This was our one shot of like any extension of paths or other just enhancements overall to hardscape landscape, not pertaining to the tot lot playground.
I'll speak up and say that one of the things that the board did a couple of years ago was to decide that we were going to commission landscape plans for all of the parks. Okay. We couldn't afford to do them, or chose not to afford to do them all simultaneously. It also would have been a little overwhelming to try and do that. So we generally do one park each year. If they're smaller ones, perhaps we can squeeze in two to the budget. But I think that we need to have a landscape plan. That's my personal feeling for Langdon or for any park before we start making landscaping decisions about it. And so it should be a more, I guess, a comprehensive plan for it. I mean, there was a lot of discussion and concern about erosion on the bluff. And if you've been there lately and tried to walk down to the beach, you know that there's about a 3-foot drop-off on the new ramp that we just carved out of the side of the bluff this year. So it is something that bears some discussion, and certainly new paths or extending paths or other amenities related to it that are not strictly the playground would be under consideration in that. Okay. And I don't know when that would be. I think I suggested that we try and move that up, in part because of the interest in Langdon this year. But we'll have a discussion about that during our capital project planning meetings, and that's this next month, right?
November.
through each committee, we'll be discussing budgets as well as related capital, and then in November, we look at the overall district capital put together.
Okay, great. And last, just clarification. So I understood it too, that there are brick pavers leading up to the playground that will be new, and then obviously the rubber surface, and then outlined in cement. I'm guessing to outline the playground. So then the existing pathways, are they staying as is, or are they going to be upgraded to some sort of new surface?
Jerry,
Are they
being removed completely?
Pathways are all being removed.
Removed completely.
Paths that lead to the playground.
Yes.
Which will also go to the road that goes down to the
Yeah.
beach. Will all be with their pavers.
Okay, so current pathways will be replaced, so it shouldn't be as
Yes.
much flooding. Great, okay. And removed. Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
removed, right?
Mostly removed.
Not replaced.
Removed.
Like what? Will it be sod?
Yes.
How do we remove a pathway, right?
Yep.
It will be grass.
Oh, so there's like,
Exactly.
So there will be a paver walkway from the sidewalk on Sheridan to the playground. Everything beyond that will
anything
be
beyond
grass
that
and
is
landscape.
done.
Correct.
Correct.
Will there be another walkway down to the beach?
The drive that exists now will remain.
Okay.
Thank you, Reed.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address us? Okay.
Wait, we got one more?
Oh, sorry. Almost missed you.
Dan Brennan, 721 Elmwood. Some of you have seen me at a few of these meetings regarding Langdon Park. I want to say thank you for the time and attention that you guys have taken on this. It's obviously something that a lot of people care very strongly about in a few directions. I'm just hoping that for my 4-year-old son who was at the last one and the 4 weeks from now incoming addition, that there is a playground to play on. So hopefully this is not tabled any longer and that the progress that we've made and the momentum that we've gotten keeps going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we will be moving on. Next on our agenda is approval of the voucher list.
All right, I move to approve the voucher list in the amount of $2,326,629.90, a copy of which is to be attached to and become a permanent part of the minutes of this meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions on this? Hearing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Peloton?
Yes.
Commissioner Ovani?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
The voucher list is approved.
Thank you. Next up, our executive director's report.
Thank you.
Wilson.
Start with Gilson Construction Project. The project has begun here slowly with the start of putting up the fencing to create the work area, and a construction trailer has been delivered. The fencing we're anticipating to be completed this Thursday, possibly even Friday at some point, and immediately after that we will have the demolition of the existing beach house begin. Also, after we left the last Lakefront Committee meeting, there was some desire to see if we could do something with the configuration of the fencing to create some parking spots for our sailors on the sailing beach to get them through as much of their season that ends on October 14th as possible. We were able to add some additional fencing to allow for about 50 spots that will be held strictly for sailors only. So people coming to go to the beach will not have access to the parking lot. Instead, they'll have access to parking within the balance of the park and access the lakefront south of what is traditionally our swimming beach, towards the area where the dunes are south of the swim beach. And moving on from that to our stormwater project update. Since the members of the village staff came to this committee and presented and had a discussion with, or not this committee, this board, and had a discussion. I went to a meeting along with Superintendent Ulrich with members of the engineering department as well as members of Burke Engineering, their hired engineers for the project, to talk about various park sites primarily talk about how the parks are used currently by us for formalized programming, by community groups such as the Baseball Association for their programming, as well as our understanding of how the community uses the parks kind of ad hoc as they go to and from our parks. We also talked quite a bit about the stormwater issues that exist within each one of those locations, because one of their hopes is to help better that situation for those parks as a part of their project. The discussion really was just an exchange of that sort of use information. The design team of Burke Engineering has gone back and presumably are working on some conceptual designs, and I am waiting to hear back further on that. So that's the stormwater project update. The only other couple items I have is, as we just talked about, we're starting in on our annual process of creating the next fiscal year budget. So starting in October, each committee will review their segment of our budget as well as the applicable capital budget items. Those conclude in November with the golf committee. Then we have a committee of the whole meeting in November to look at all the capital items put together. And then in December, we have another committee of the whole meeting to look at the full budget rolled up in one large document. Then looking forward to your agenda, you have a couple items on the agenda coming out of the Parks and Rec Committee. We had a couple bids, one being for fitness equipment at the fitness center over at the Community Recreation Center, as well as the bid for the Langdon Park Playground. You will see attached to my report a memo that I wrote for the Langdon Park Playground outlining the financial impact to the bid based on the changes made by the Parks and Recreation Committee. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. I would like to circle back to the stormwater, if that's okay. And part of the reason I asked Steve to put it under his report was because he is the point person at this time with the village staff. He has the most up-to-date information so that he can present it to us. And our intention is to be completely transparent with the public, take public input as we're discussing this. This is not something that's going to be done behind closed doors and secret meetings or anything like that. We, as commissioners, can't talk about anything unless we do it in front of you all. So I wanted it to be under his report so that he could give all of us the same information at the same time, and we could have a discussion about where we are now in this project and where we will be going with this project. So at this point, I would like to open up to the commissioners to have a discussion.
Is there any kind of time frame or milestones that we've set up at this point in terms of when things are going to happen?
No, at this point, there's no hard time frames. There was an original discussion. The reason I look at President Wolf was our initial discussion. There were some comments made, I think, at village board meetings about, within a year, and I think they very quickly understood we're just starting our deliberation, and so they have backed off that phrasing, and so they're not looking to do anything necessarily in 2019.
Oh, yeah, I think I was more on the preliminary stuff.
I guess.
And there's no hard schedule on any of those, on how
then we'd have
we're
agreement
going to talk
by-
next at this date or anything. None of that has been laid out, no.
Okay, all right.
Steve, I guess I would disagree with that because I went to their website today, and it still says, right here, the village goal is to be ready to commence work on the first neighborhood storage project at the community playfield or Centennial Park by the fall of 2019. That's a schedule.
That sounds like
That's a
schedule.
date.
That's different than our conversation.
Well,
But that's on their website as of 3 o'clock this afternoon.
I can follow up on that.
So, my overall view on this as a commissioner is that I think our board has not adequately met our responsibilities, as a board and representing the parks in Wilmette to be as transparent and to allow a public input into this proposed project. We have not conducted a public meeting with the stormwater as an announced agenda item. I disagree with President Wolf that it should have been, I think it should be an agenda item so that there can be motions that can be put out about this project and what our role is in this project and what we should be doing, what should we be creating our own committee. But by having it in our agenda under the executive director's report, the Robert Rules of Order would make it a lot harder to pass a motion, about this project. I totally agree with what the League of Women Voters said earlier today, which, if you go back to look at our minutes, it wasn't announced, in there in advance that the village was going to speak. They didn't have any information for us, and I feel like our board needs and the public needs an opportunity to fully vet and respond to the proposal from the perspective of the parks, not the perspective of the infrastructure of the village. Our responsibility as board members is for the parks. And I find it very, very distressing that we as commissioners have not been asked which parks are off the table, which parks are on the table, which ones, and as far as I know, we have not, as a board, given the executive director the ability to discuss which parks we should be saying are off the table, which parks should be on the table. I think it's really odd that the village and the village staff and the park district staff are having meetings and there's drawings that are being drawn about, and we haven't even been asked, are we allowed to do business, or are we allowed to build this on your park? I mean,
Can I ask you- Can I interrupt for a quick question?
No, you can't, because I have the floor.
And I understand, but
I
you
have the
just said,
floor.
that there are drawings being drawn.
I have the floor.
And that's news to me.
That's what he just said. That's what Steve just said. There's schematic drawings being done. If you were listening, that's what he said.
Okay.
Don't be rude. I mean, just make your point, but don't be rude.
I asked him not to speak, because I had the floor.
Don't be rude.
John has the floor.
Would
So
you
go
like to
ahead, John.
continue?
Yes, I would. One example of this that I think is worthwhile to think about, when we just went through, the Parks and Rec Committee went through putting in a playground at one of our parks. And one of the big discussion points was the width of the sidewalk or the width of the plant. We're talking about putting in a tank underneath the ground at one of our parks. And we haven't had a public meeting that we've announced this yet. I don't think we're doing our responsibility as commissioners the way we're handling this thus far.
So
I'm done.
what would you recommend moving forward?
I'll do that later on.
Okay. Later on as in?
I mean, I think I'd like to make a motion, but I can't make a motion because it's not on the agenda.
Well, it's under update.
But it's not under new business.
I have specific
I mean,
recommendations.
to be honest with you, what I would like to do, Amy, is I would like to I think that we should have a subcommittee of our board that is the ones that are in the room and be the ones that are negotiating on the part of our parks. And I think that we should have a separate committee that looks at this project.
You think that would be different than like the real estate committee or the intergovernmental committee?
It could be a subset of either one. But we should have public meetings, and we should be giving everybody the opportunity to speak about this, and we should know what we're doing. We don't know, as a commissioner, I am completely in the dark about what's being discussed. Steve may have had a meeting with the staff, but I don't know anything about it. And after I heard his comments, I still don't really know anything. And we actually had that discussion that we had with the village was in July, maybe, or June, and now it's September 12th.
But there's only been one meeting with our staff and their staff since then. There hasn't been like a multitude.
But why shouldn't we be? I guess what I'm getting at is that why shouldn't our board be involved? Why shouldn't we be giving direction to the staff to say, you know what, we don't think that Centennial, I'm just using it in a park as an example, we don't think Centennial is a park that we should be considering.
I guess that's what I was thinking we would be doing now, is having discussions along those lines. Again, we don't meet in private, and we have
That's
to have
my
an
point.
open meeting. So I was hoping the entire board would have discussions at this time to say those things.
We could do that too.
Or is this
But
big
this
enough
is
that
the
you need a
first time.
separate meeting? Is there like a committee of the whole you can do with, just to
Yeah.
have the discussion?
Committee of the whole,
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, this is not a topic where we're going to discuss it fully in the course of this meeting.
Well,
I don't
Agreed.
think.
No,
Yeah.
agreed. I mean, we have to get started.
Yeah, so,
I have things to say, but I'll wait to be recognized, so.
I mean, is a committee of the whole meeting of some type where we can just talk about stuff and no decisions, but get it out there so everybody can get their thoughts on the table?
We don't have a procedure in place for how we're going to go about looking at this project, is I guess my point.
So I go back to what would your recommendation be for the procedure?
It should be in a committee.
It should be in a committee. So form a committee and not.
Or a committee of the whole, I don't
Okay.
care, but I think that there should be, we should have we should have meetings about this topic alone.
I
And
would
it
agree.
feels to me, and it seemingly feels to some of the people in the public, as if the staffs are having the discussion and the board is not involved.
Again, I think
That's the public comment that I heard tonight.
Like I said, there's only been one meeting between the two staffs on this, so hasn't been like drawn-out discussions.
I disagree with that statement. I think there's been multiple meetings between staffs on this topic, going back for a long time.
I guess I am concerned if it goes to a committee, then it's 3 board members
That's why
making decisions.
That's why I'm asking for the committee. of
And
the
that's
whole.
why I wanted it to be a discussion amongst everybody so that everybody has the same information at the same time and we can discuss it all together and everyone's opinion is heard, not just 3 members in a committee.
If that
Only
is-
problem with the committee of the whole is that you can't make a motion in a committee of the whole. There can't have an action item in a committee of the whole meeting.
But that we could have a
I mean, like,
recommendation.
as an example, we couldn't make a motion to hire our own independent environmental impact study.
Sure, but we, as
You can make a
Gordon says, we
recommendation
could
to
do
the
it here.
board and we could do it in the board meeting.
You can do that, yeah.
I think it's an important enough issue that if we went to a committee of the whole to have these discussions, and everybody really does want to take part in these discussions, then certainly that is a way forward. And I would endorse that way forward. I do, like I said, I have things to say, but I'll wait till John has fully.
Do you have anything else to add to that? Okay. Who's next?
No, I think it's a topic that deserves its own meeting. It's not a committee kind of thing, I don't think. I think it's for the whole board, and I think a committee of the whole meeting is a perfect situation for that.
Well, unless Brian wants to go, I would say that I agree with Gordon, that my understanding has always been that the full board would be considering it, and that we would do so in open meetings, and that staff would be taking whatever it is that we were saying, communicating that to the village board, or the village staff, who would then talk to the village board, and I don't know of any instance, and it perhaps is my ignorance, where one board communicates directly to the other board or has face-to-face meetings. That's not to say that that's impossible, but I think that if we allow staff to obtain the information from our staff, to obtain the information from the village and to bring it to us for our consideration and deliberation, then we can take votes as is necessary and do it in a way that is transparent, that is allows us to inform the public about it, and allows us to move forward. It's going to take some time, so I don't feel like there's a great deal that is being, that we're rushing through the process or that we've missed something so far, because if we do decide on a committee of the whole, that's going to slow it down still further, because we have the committee of the whole meeting, and then we actually have to have a full board meeting in order to take any decisive action, to take any votes. I'm not in a particular rush about this. I think that the village is interested in seeing it done as quickly as possible, and there are certainly large numbers of the residents who are interested in getting it done as quickly as possible. But I think that our responsibility is to make sure that we're doing the best we can for the Park District. And my comment when Mr. Frenzer and the village engineer came to talk to us was that I wanted to make sure that the Park District was essentially made whole through the process, and that continues to be my goal. So I share the concerns about making sure that we are on top of this as a board. I share the concerns that we allow for resident and concerned citizens to voice their input on the process. But I am not concerned currently that we are not doing that, or that we will not be doing that. So, I'm just waiting for the process to move forward a little bit further.
And I don't have any issues with discussions going on behind the scenes, sharing information, getting as much out there between the staffs as possible. That's not really the issue in my mind. It's having our discussions and the public discussions. And I think in this case, adding a meeting or committee of the whole meeting, I think will be going slow to go faster. I mean, I do worry about the timing. This thing, we can't let it drag out forever. Let's just get it on a schedule and start making it happen. I mean, but with all the appropriate steps involved. But if we don't manage it, it tends to drag, as we know.
Oh, it drags anyway.
Well, but it drags more.
Brian, I'm going to come to you. I just want to see, because I know you have.
Yeah, I don't have much. I feel similarly to Ryrie. The League of Women Voters mentioned that they've gone back through our minutes and agendas to 2017, and I just don't understand what we are supposed to have been discussing about this when the village voted on it on April 17th, 2018. So until then, we didn't know which direction they were going to go. And I guess if since then we're irresponsible, I just find that aggressive. So there's nothing going on that I think is not transparent. Like Gordon said, I hope our staffs are communicating. I really hope so. I mean, that's a good thing. So I'm fine with the committee of the whole. I'm just taken aback by some of the attitude here. I think we're gonna figure out a process and we can get community input. I don't know. I'm surprised at the attack.
Brian?
Well, I don't consider this an attack. I consider this raising of concerns. The village board floated this idea and has been working on it for a long time. One of their solutions was to use the parks. This has been at least a year and a half. We have seen this. I've gotten mailings. It has been no mystery. For whatever reason, it's not that we decided not to talk about it. We just didn't talk about it. Just haven't talked about it. Now, this has gotten way down the road. They've hired a designer. They think they have a schedule. Our staffs are negotiating. Somebody may think that somehow or another they're talking about details, but when they're talking about whether or not they're going in the community playfields or they're going in Centennial, I think that's a negotiation. I don't recall this board authorizing staff to negotiate on behalf of our residents. It's our job. I can't tell Neil where this tank's going. And I don't know because I don't really know what's going on in these meetings. So it's not like this has just suddenly hit us. The village board has not come to this board to engage in any sort of dialogue. I've been a little kind of taken aback by that they felt that they could just pass a plan. They had lots of plans. If my neighbor wants to build his garage in my backyard, I'd think at some point they'd come ask me. So we've gotten way down the road, and we're not actually engaged in the discussions. So whether or not, we haven't told staff to negotiate. We haven't said anything. Our inaction is the issue tonight. That is what we're talking about. So I have a proposal. I have a recommendation, which I have shared, and I will just go through the highlights of this. Much of this follows the same format that we used with regard to Gilson. I would say this format is similar to any large project, how you should do it. I'm going to read it, and I'll beg your indulgence. So I just want to start. The Park District's owned by the residents of Wilmette. We act as their representatives. So they're the owners. We act as their representatives. I believe this should be thoroughly vetted, carefully considered. The public needs ample notification, time to consider the options, opportunity to weigh on in on the project before we start talking to designers, or at least with the help of the designers, but I'm not sure why there's a schedule out. The previous village hearings and deliberations were not adequate in this regard, as they never broached the issue of impact to the parks. I agree with John, this is no longer a village project. Once the village made the decision to place their tanks in our parks, it became a Park District project. We have to take ownership. At this point, neither the board, our board, nor the residents are in position to begin negotiations on this project. The village's designs, preliminary work, belong to the village, not to us. Their designs and assumptions were developed without input from our board, without input from our residents. So our goals here are straightforward: to manage this project effectively while placing the highest priority on the needs and the greater good of our residents. They're the owners. So I'm just going to talk about how do you do this. So any project has a few. I'm going to talk about the first 3 steps, not the rest. You hire a design team. We had nothing to do with the hiring of this designer. So it's the most important decision in any project, hiring the right designer. I think we've seen that. So in this case, they hired their own designer who works for them, not us. And although it's my expectations we'll talk to them, they answer solely to the village board and the staff. It puts us at a considerable disadvantage. We don't have the technical skills and knowledge to analyze and effectively protect our interests. So we're reduced to accepting whatever we're told. I would recommend, it's a major recommendation, that our board hire our own design representative to oversee our interests. This representative would not actually design, produce drawings, but rather just act solely as a peer review and advisory capacity. In my opinion, the value of their input would far exceed the modest cost. We need some expertise. So programming, this is a critical step. This is what we went through with regard to the lakefront. We seem to be struggling with that. Programming meetings are really important. Stormwater, the village has gotten years down the road with their programming. We haven't begun. So they have programming assumptions that may or may not prove to be true. Underground tanks in this park. We have a responsibility to discuss that and go back to the beginning. The village's programming has been focused on their stormwater issues. Our priorities have been given insufficient attention. If they've given us any attention with their programming, I'm not aware of it. That's important. I don't know what give and take has been taking place. My expectations are that this board and the community will have ample opportunities to hear, then consider, respond to interactive programming sessions, much in the same way that Andy Tanucci of Woodhouse Tanucci engaged the Park District Board and the community in multiple programming meetings. Those were very well done. So the Woodhouse Tanucci comparison, they've been excellent and provides valuable insights in how we can effectively bring this project to a successful conclusion. I know it's frustrating at times, but short-circuiting that process is counterproductive in my opinion. With regard to the design, obviously the vast majority of this project's design will be set by the village. It's really there to address their stormwater issues. That doesn't mean that we don't have concerns. I feel once again that the presence of a consultant who reviews the ongoing designs, keeps an eye on our interests, would be a worthy investment. I strongly advise our board to insist on regular updates. I talked about the West Park in July, that there were radical changes made to their tank design. After we said yes, I'd like to make sure that we should be able to sign off on the steps of design as it goes down so we don't get one of these shifts. I'm not going to talk any more about that, but it was a disappointment. So that just like on the lakefront project where schematic design, design development, construction documents underwent a review by the board and an approval process, I think that's a valuable step for us to insist upon. I'm almost done. Operations, again, we don't have this board doesn't have the technical expertise to understand the long-term ramifications of this tank and its operations. And again, having a consultant advise us in terms of setting up these agreements, again, I think would be a valuable step for our board to make. So that was my recommendation with regard to that. So that, to me, is how you run an effective project with lots of input, and that's what I'm looking for. I believe that our Tesla has been contacted with regard to some opinions on this project, what may or may not be possible. I have seen no memos to that in that regard. Since Tesla works for all 7 commissioners, I'd like to know what those conversations might be and have those opinions passed on to the full board. I felt at a bit of a disadvantage in a recent conversation because I don't know. And that's sort of been my concern, is I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what all this means. We're not talking about it. So, I share in the League of Women Voters, they put it as well as anybody could have, not to take away anything from Go Green or other groups, but they certainly, I agree with their request. The public came here tonight to make a request that we be more open and more forthcoming and present a plan for how we're going to review this project, and all I could do is second their call for greater transparency and a plan be put in place. Finally, if it doesn't go to a general committee, I'm asking that this be placed on the next Parks and Rec. I realize that Centennial is a facility site. 3 out of the 4 sites are Parks and Rec sites. And so, absent a committee of the whole or some other committee starting to talk about this, I'm asking that it be placed on the next Parks and Rec committee. Certainly facilities can talk about it too, in the next Parks and Rec committee meeting. I think that wraps up, unless there's further discussion.
And can I ask Brian a question?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
So, are you suggesting that we hire our own design team and consultants and engineers, or basically a project team?
I'm suggesting that we would hire a consultant who would not draw, but rather advise, so that, because there's lots of, anyway, yes, that's what I'm suggesting, and I won't try to go any, there's no sense. So, yes, I'm suggesting that we lack the expertise to negotiate on behalf of our parks on such a technical project.
So we would have our own project team, the village would have a project team for one project?
Yeah, this consultant would not put his name on the drawings and wouldn't draw anything. They would just simply advise us as to the ramifications of the design and is it meeting our programmatic requirements for the project as the project goes through design. And they would advise us on operations and pros and cons, a little bit of technical expertise to help us make good decisions.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the plan all along?
Correct. So similar to looking at West Park, we had engineers engaged the whole way through reviewing the plans, advocating for us on our behalf. And that was always the intent on this as well.
Okay. I am delighted to hear that. And again, it's not the intention to be antagonistic to one another, but to work out a plan
Absolutely.
That satisfies.
We need someone with the technical expert advocating for us.
Thank you.
And I guess my concern was more than that, in the sense of whatever agreement we have with the village, that having our own advice is one thing, being able to influence the final product and what leverage we have to do that has got to be somehow caught in that legal document. And I don't know, that's what I want to make sure we're doing, even more so than what Brian's doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Once again, with using West Park as our only prior experience on this sort of intergovernmental agreement, that document is heavily discussed and reviewed by both boards, both legal representations of both entities, and eventually voted on by both boards in its final form.
Before it's signed.
Steve, are you aware if the village uses the same law firm that we use?
They no longer do. They have an in-house attorney now.
And then I just have one other thing.
Okay.
Sorry,
No, it's
I
okay.
am not comfortable with this being on for like on the Parks and Rec Committee, just because of
that was an only
the
if,
commissioner makeup of that committee, I would not be comfortable with that.
I was calling for it to be added to the agenda. Should we not come up with another plan? I can do that. I can ask for.
You can ask for it, and I can say that I'm not comfortable with that.
Of course you may, and I respect your opinion.
Okay, I just want to say a few things. One, I think this is just the beginning of the process. The whole point of having this discussion tonight was to, again, talk about what we know to date and where we are going moving forward. So we've had some good discussions. I don't think we're way down the road. I don't think anything's been done. I don't think that, we are not at a place where we can start to open up the dialogue and the communication amongst us and the community. Secondly, I think there's, and I know we don't want to use West Park as an example of how this is done before, but that's our most recent and most successful intergovernmental agreement. So we will look to the staff as to kind of how that process went and helping us formulate possibly how this process could go. I disagree that this is a complete Park District project at this point. I think this is a village project, and we need to work with the village to come up with an intergovernmental agreement that they will then put into motion. But it is our responsibility as a park board to discuss it and make sure that we are being the best stewards of the park that we can be, and that we are dotting our I's and crossing our T's when we go into the agreement so that the village can take that agreement and run with it. After that, I don't think we are there to be micromanaging or overseeing them or getting involved in it, because it's an intergovernmental agreement, and that's what it's meant to do, is for them to take it forward. We already do have plans to hire representations and engineers on our behalf to help us make sure that we're doing what's right for the parks and the longevity and the future. We don't want to be short-sighted in what we decide now that 30 years from now we're like, oh, I wish we hadn't put a tank there. With that being said, our staff is phenomenal on the day-to-day interactions of what goes on in all these parks, what possibly what might need down the road and things like that. So we do, as a board, somewhat have to defer to their expertise and their knowledge of what we could think of long-term as well. So we want to make sure that the staff is fully involved in all of our discussions. Let's see, what else did I have on here? So moving forward, what I would like to say is that I think that I would like to have the discussions again with the entire board, and I would like to ask staff to put a committee of the whole meeting together in the near future. I don't know if that's this month or when everybody's schedules will allow, so that we can have another discussion about this. Again, no motions will be made at that time, but we can have recommendations that we can come back with at a full board meeting to move forward with and to direct staff so that they have a better understanding of where all our heads are. Everybody's opinion is just as valuable as everyone else's, and just because one person thinks we should do it one way, we all have to take into consideration and try to come up with a consensus of how we would like to move this forward. And then we'll come together, hopefully, eventually down the road with an intergovernmental agreement. So I think that's the end goal. It's a matter of getting from where we are now to the intergovernmental agreement. And we will have a committee of the whole meeting to discuss any further information that we have and how people would like to see things going. How's that sound?
Great. Could I just pick up where John might have left off earlier? I think we should give the village notice for two reasons: that they should eliminate the calendar that they've got on their website. First of all, there's no way that they know whether that's a good date or not.
Right.
And second of all, it's, to Brian's point, a little presumptuous again on their part without us even having started the process. So I think there's dual purpose behind it.
Agree.
Yes. We didn't opt into a schedule we didn't agree to.
All right. Any other comments on this matter? Okay. Anything else from our executive director?
I think I've said it all. Yes.
I actually have a question about his report.
The Gilson side?
Yeah, exactly. I saw in there, and this was news to me, that we're awaiting receipt of a permit from the MWRD.
Correct.
When do we think that might be in hand?
We're anticipating October 1st.
Okay.
Is this a stormwater permit?
It's It's everything underground permit. Yes.
Interesting, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else for Director Wilson? All right, we'll be moving along to committee reports. Lakefront Committee.
Well, Steve stole some of my thunder there about fencing and exciting things like that. But the Lakefront Committee met on Tuesday, September 4th. It was Tuesday instead of Monday because of Labor Day. We discussed Sailing Beach parking. A handful of residents attended to ask about where they could park until October 14th, when the Sailing Beach was scheduled to close for the season, especially because they're concerned about being able to take things to and from their sailboats. And we received several emails about this issue as well. I'm not sure, I can't recall at this point whether they went to everybody or just to the committee members. But there was a great deal of concern about it. Brian and I attended the meeting and were very sympathetic to it, and asked staff to figure out what it is that could be done, and they have helped to resolve the problem, at least in part, by arranging for 45 spaces on the north end of the main parking lot to be fenced off with temporary fencing for, we were told, a 2-week period until the lot was scheduled to be torn up. It may be longer than that, depending on how things go. I actually, the schedule is something that I want to talk about some more. We also discussed other parking alternatives throughout the park because the other alternatives came to mind prior to trying to do anything that might delay the work on the new beach house and the new parking lot. One of the things that staff has taken initiative on is setting up potential parking along the middle drive. Is that what it's called?
Depends on which one you're talking about. Road. That's Middle Drive, yes.
The one that runs past the tennis courts.
Correct.
And has been closed off for traffic for quite some time, for the sailors to use after the lot is demolished. But
actually, it's going to be a combination of uses, sailors, but also all the rentals at Lakeview Center. So when we can make it available to sailors, we will.
Okay. But anyway, additional parking, and that was one way of creating some additional parking spaces. And staff has already installed gates at the south end. I don't know if they did it at the north end or not. I haven't looked at that. We also talked about parking along the upper drive and making that, whether or not we should make that exclusively for sailors or for permit holders or residents or some combination of those. Staff suggested that originally as an alternative, if we, especially if we were not able to get spots in the parking lot. We do have that now. So Brian wanted it to remain as is, and I had suggested making it permanent and resident parking through the end of the construction process. Staff recommended leaving it as it is after we obtained the spots in the lot. But today, Commissioner Shelley indicated that she supports making it resident and permanent parking only. And so I believe that is the direction that we'll be heading just for the duration of the construction, and non-residents then who are not permit holders will need to park outside the park. Both Brian and I told staff that we needed significantly more signage, notifying the public about what's going on, what they can expect in the way of what's happening in the park, beach access, and parking, et cetera. And my understanding is that that's coming today or tomorrow. Right now we're limited to 2 sandwich board signs at the Lake Avenue entrance. And I was down there today, and the guys are putting up fencing off what people had been using as access to the beach from the parking lot. And there were an elderly couple that was inside the fence with their dog trying to figure out, could they get out the other side if they kept going this way? And then later on, when I came back, there was actually a couple, I thought this was interesting enough, I took a picture of it, sitting where the picnic tables used to be on the east side of the beach house, having a picnic. Fenced in,
Old
but
habits die
having
hard.
having their picnic. Yeah, old habits die hard, exactly. In any event, the fencing along the sand is now in place, and the fencing along the north side, temporary fencing along the north side of the parking lot's in place. Other than that, it's been a sort of a slow, or much slower start than I anticipated. I had been saying we were going to be there was going to be a beehive of activity come Tuesday after Labor Day. And in part of that's my impatience, but in part because we have been told that there are only so many good construction days in between now and Memorial Day. I did go back and look at the miniature schedule, and it says that demolition is not scheduled to start until September 25th, which that was something that I was dissonant with what I had understood. But by that count, we're actually they're on their schedule. So we'll have to cross our fingers and keep going and hope that they get it done by Memorial Day. There's supposed to be warm weather this weekend, and I talked to Steve today. We've got some of the warmest water temperatures, and I expect a lot of beachgoers. So once again, the signage and having staff in place to help people understand how they can get to the beach, where they can park, what they can do. And then I'm not sure what we do with Langdon. I brought actually a couple of pictures if you guys want to pass them around. If you haven't seen Langdon recently, these are from yesterday. I don't know if this is the Chicasian's fence or the one if you're going to Elmwood, but it's dramatic how much beach has eroded with the last storm. I would estimate about 20 feet based on that fencing.
You have to crawl under it.
I'm not sure. We'll have to take a look at the sort of closer to the start of next year about what it is that we may be able to do or what we want to do at Langdon. But we're going to be faced with potentially the same problem we had this year, only worse, if it continues the way it is. Other than that, the triathlon is this month in Gilson, despite the construction, September 16th, I believe it is.
This Sunday.
Yeah, and we approved a permit for use of part of the park for the Warming Houses Riptoberfest, which is going to take place on October 13th. And that's my report.
Any questions for the Lakefront Committee? Thank you very much. We will move on to facilities.
The Facilities Committee met tonight before this meeting. The update at the pool, we were able to keep normal hours extended until August 26th, and we started our reduced hours on August 27th. We had a great pool season this year, mostly really good weather, and we're expecting to be above budget, but we'll see numbers next month. And we are currently winterizing the pool. At Centennial, Learn to Skate, figure skating, hockey, they've all started their Fall 1 session. Last Saturday, we held a very busy and successful village-wide garage sale. And the parking lot at Centennial is being seal-coated today and tomorrow. It should be done by Friday. And on Tuesday, September 25th, the League of Women Voters is holding National Voter Registration Day at Centennial. In tennis, permanent court time started this week. We're up 3.5 time slots compared to last year. The start of the indoor season has been strong. Jason told us about a new program called the Juniors USTA Level 5 Single Day Shootout Series. It's an entry-level competitive tournament tennis league, or it's tournament play for entry-level juniors. They have 5 events before the end of the year, and they have 5 scheduled for the second half of the winter season. And then at paddle, all the new courts are up. We just need the gas line for the heaters, but otherwise they're functional and people are playing on them. Paddle camps started this week, and classes and programming starts next week. This year we're going to have 8 ladies teams and 21 men's teams, which is 1 less ladies team and 3 more men's teams. That's it.
Any questions for Facilities Committee? All right, we will move along to Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec Committee met on August 28th, and it was a well-attended meeting. Obviously, Langdon was a major topic, and I'm going to get back to that in a minute. In general, camps have, been shut down, and fall schedules have been, going into place at the CRC and at our other facilities. In that regard, there is an approval here from staff, a recommendation for fitness equipment that's come in. There's a memo from Kathy Bingham for fitness equipment. It's well under budget. So we can discuss it, but I'll make a motion to approve the bid from Direct Fitness in the amount of $19,680 for the purchase of new fitness equipment as recommended by the Parks and Recreation Committee.
I'll second.
If there's any questions, we can answer
And
them.
again, for everybody, this is just something that as pieces of equipment start to fail on an annual basis, we look at our inventory of what needs to be replaced, and we a lot of times trade them in or get some value for them, and then purchase new things based on what is needed and what we see a lot of usage.
19,000, almost 20,000 versus a budget of 20,000, 30,000. So.
Any other comments or questions? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletin?
Yes.
Commissioner Olvani?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Bid is approved.
Thank you.
So on the second order of business here, Langdon Park, well, if there's anything we know about Langdon Park, it's that people sure do love Langdon. Since the spring, the committee and staff have been engaged in a long-running dialogue with the community on Langdon and the need for a new playground. And we've heard, I think it's safe to say, a diversity of opinions from anywhere from do nothing to think big. As the committee and staff has parsed through these opinions, we felt that there were some meeting of the minds that the playground itself, we felt there was a strong public support for replacing the playground. And so with regard to other aspects of the design that came up through these public meetings that we had in the park, that received some criticism. So the staff, both as a cost saving and in recognition of this diversity of opinion and trying to find the middle way, removed, as you heard tonight, the many of the items that was not directly associated with either the playground or getting to the playground. And so that includes that circular walk, porch swings, the outhouse screen. That netted us a considerable savings. And we were able to bring in, with our recommendation, we're about 14,000 under budget, a budget of around 270,000. We will be recommending 256,000. And so we can discuss it more, but I'm going to go ahead and make the motion. I move to approve the bid from Innovation Landscape Incorporated in the amount of $256,108.60 for the Langdon Park renovation project as recommended by the Parks and Recreation Committee.
I'll second that.
Questions? This is bid after it was modified in the last committee meeting.
Correct.
Any other questions? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletin?
Yes.
Commissioner Olvani?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Bid is approved.
Thank you all.
You will have a new playground.
As this board knows, it's about 34 years.
Sorry we took so long. We'll invite you to the ribbon cutting.
Yeah, we got some new members.
Yeah. Anything else from Parks and Rec?
Nothing from me.
Any other questions for Parks and Rec? All right, we'll move along to the Golf Operations Committee.
So Golf Operations Committee met in July, and we covered a few different topics. We looked at an analysis that was done about the zip codes that our patrons come from, and that was a very interesting analysis, which is very similar to what we had anticipated in the business plan process, that being that most of our patrons are Village of Wilmette residents, but a large percentage of our patrons come from Glenview, and the northern neighborhoods in the city. We have a very limited amount of people coming from the northern suburbs, and so therefore we're going to direct our marketing efforts towards the city and surrounding communities. The other topic that has been discussed pretty regularly at our meetings is the new concessionaire a la carte. It appears that the customer experience is improving and that there is a good working relationship between both the staff of the Wilmette Park District as well as the staff of a la carte, who's the concessionaire there. They're willing to listen and they're willing to improve, and they're working well together. I would note that Adam, our general manager, said he thinks that it's really important to have a good dining experience for our golf course because it helps us get good reviews, and that helps us generate interest and demand for tee times. So in this interconnected world, that is an important aspect of the experience. With regard to play, in July, we had an increase in rounds over 2017 by about 1,000 rounds, which is quite good. And in August, it was just up marginally from 5,727 to 5,745. Importantly, though, two things. One of the things we've been trying to drive higher is the price per round, how much revenue we get per round, and that number is now up from $28.04 to $30.40. So that's actually a good barometer of how we've improved operations. And then lastly, on the pure revenue front, we're basically about $64,000 above our revenue goals for last year, and in line with the budget through the end of August. So that is helpful that the weather's been good, but it's also helpful that we've been able to hold down expenses over the course of this year. And we have another meeting on Saturday. And that's my report.
Any questions for the Golf Committee? None. We'll move forward to Financial Planning and Policy Committee.
All right. We met on Monday, August 27th, and we talked about 4 different things. One was we had our advisor in from Piper Jaffray to talk about a couple things. One was the bond issue notification we just talked about earlier today, but also refunding, once again, the 2009 refunded debt. We have the ability to kind of refinance at a lower interest rate. It'll save us $84,000 over the next 3 years, so we're moving ahead with that as well. We got the June year-to-date financial results, as well as all of that. Unlike the board packet where we just get kind of a top sheet, we get the whole packet on the Finance Committee, so we had gone through that and asked a whole bunch of questions on what was going on in all the various areas. So that was done with staff. And in looking at the July results that we got in the packet tonight, just a couple of comments. One is, if you take out the tax revenue, we are running nicely ahead of last year on the revenue side, slightly behind budget overall on the revenue side, ignoring the taxes. But on the expense side, to John's point on the golf course, we are running under last year's expenses and well under the budget expenses. So at a kind of an operating profit level, we're well ahead of budget through July. So that's a good place to be. We went over the budget calendar. Really no changes from last year at all there. So we'll just follow the same committee formats, and the capital in November and the total budget in December. That won't change. And then we had a discussion because we've had a couple years in a row where we've put out a tax levy that we thought was pretty good, and we were always trying to capture what's available to us. And we've been short a couple years in a row, so we had a discussion. There was no decisions or anything more than some understanding about why we're just not getting as much as we thought we would get every year. And that was the meeting.
Any questions for the Finance Committee? All right, thank you very much. Next on our agenda is unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business before this board? Hearing none. Any new business before this board? No. On our agenda, it says adjourn to closed session. We do not need to do that because we already approved our closed session minutes, so we will not be adjourning to a closed session. So may I have a motion to adjourn this regular board meeting, please? All those in favor?
I'll second it.
Second, sorry, second. And then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Meeting's adjourned.